Pawn to e4. Pawn to c5. Knight to f3. Pawn to e6. Pawn to d4. Pawn to d4. Knight to d4. Knight to f6, the French Sicilian. Knight to c3. Knight to c6. Knight to c6. Pawn to c6. Most black's pawns are on light squares, so the corresponding dark squares are momentarily weak. Pawn to e5. Knight to d5. Knight to e4. The e5 pawn is taking a ride supported by his horse. Together pawn and knight are a thorn that pressures the dark squares and hinders black's development. Queen to c7. Pawn to f4. Rook to b8, overloading the c1 bishop. Now it has to keep an eye on b2 and f4. Black has accumulated potential energy in the queenside. The drawback is that his king is still in the center and his light square's bishop is still inside the pawn chain. White to play. What to move? If pawn to c4, the idea of dislodging the knight is very natural, and is actually the main line. However, this move weakens the c4 and d4 squares. Also allows black to activate with tempo. None of white's bodyguards can block the check. King to g8, a great move. And this is a theoretical crazy line. White is a piece up but has the king in the center. Stockfish says white is winning, but according to the database, in human play black has a winning probability of 51%. Bishop to d3, an interesting move, was played in the game. White goes for a less known, and therefore, safer sideline. Pawn to c5. Pawn to c4. Knight to b4. King to g1, an interesting move, and we reach a new position. There are no games in Uzchess Masters database from here. Black to play. What to move? If bishop to b7. Knight to d3 was played in the game. In my opinion, black rushed to grab white's good bishop. There are fresh pastures on d4 that the horse might like. Queen to d3. Bishop to b7. White to play. What to move? If bishop to d2, a great move. Pawn to f5, a great move, and white is better. Rook to f2 was played in the game. One of the main trumps of black is the long diagonal light squares diagonal. With this move, white protects g2 and relieves the bishop from the defense of b2. Black to play. What to move? If bishop to e4, a great move, getting rid of the monstrous octopus before is too late. King to g8 with equality. Queen to c6 was played in the game. Rook to e2. No one can dislodge white's central horse. Black to play. What to move? If bishop to e7, a blunder. Knight to f5, white is winning. If queen to a6, a great move, letting the clergyman take care of the horse. Pawn to d5, a blunder was played in the game. Black is suffocating due to lack of space and rushes to open the position. This goes against the principles though. You can't open the position if your opponent has better development. Pawn to d6. Always grab the free pawn. Rook to d8. Bishop to d2, a great move, calmly developing the bishop to his only available square. Bishop to d6. Queen to g3, a great move, transferring the lady to the attack. King to g8. Since black prioritized his queenside development in the opening, now his kingside is in trouble. Bishop to c3. Pawn to e5. Pawn to e5. Bishop to e7. White to play. What to move? If knight to f6. Less precise than knight d6. The knight is untouchable. Knight to d5, white is winning. Knight to d6, a great move, was played in the game, blocking the action of the queen over the kingside and preparing to go to the Kasparov square. f5, if necessary. Black to play. What to move? If bishop to d6. White to play. What to move? If rook to e1, white is winning. If rook to d1, white is winning. Pawn to g6 was played in the game, relieving the pressure on g7. Knight to f5, using the pin to reroute the knight. Queen to e6. Knight to e7, removing the dark square's defender. Queen to e7. Pawn to e6, opening a line for the c3 dragon. Pawn to f6. Rook to f1. So far white was playing quite well even without one rook. Vokhidov is not AlphaZero, so he can't give rook odds to Nepo. White finishes his development on move 25 and brings the last piece to finish the job. Bishop to c8. Queen to h4. Black to play. What to move? If pawn to g5, a obvious move. Queen to h6, white is winning. White's queen attacks f6 from all directions. On the other hand, black's queen is overloaded defending the kingside and blocking the e-pawn to prevent a fork on e7. Bishop to e6 was played in the game. Bishop to f6. Queen to f7, pinning the f6 bishop. Rook to f2. Rook to d7. Pawn to b3, quietly defending the c4 pawn. Queen to e8. Queen to g5, attacking both sides of the board. Black can't defend all his weaknesses. Black to play. What to move? If rook to c7, a obvious move, is not possible to waste time defending pawns. Rook to f7 was played in the game. Queen to c5. Queen to d7. Queen to g5, now is a matter of technique. Queen to d3. Pawn to h3, a small step for a pawn but a giant leap for white. Bishop to c8. Pawn to h4, the humble pawn slowly moves forward to break the kingside. Bishop to b7. Pawn to h5. Pawn to a5. Rook to f5. Rook to g7. Queen to h6. Black to play. What to move? If rook to e7. Pawn to g7, white is winning. Rook to f7 was played in the game. Rook to f2, and black resigns. A catastrophe at the opening allowed Vokhidov to seize the initiative. Black wasn't ready to open the center with d5. Developing the queenside at the cost of keeping the king in the center is a double-edged weapon. And in this game, after black finally castled, there were no pieces to defend the castle. Also, black didn't pondered correctly the value of the powerful e4 knight, and preferred to keep his b7 bishop instead of exchanging it.